You're listening to Post-Dramatic Stress, hosted by Charlotte Dee, a weekly podcast to connect creatives and communicate about the highs, lows and laughs of being in a creative industry. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Post-Dramatic Stress. Today I am joined by a co-host. How magical and wonderful for me and hopefully for you, audience. It's someone you've known before. Her name is Isabella Jacqueline. We will refer to her most likely as Bella throughout the day, but hi Bella.
Hello, thank you for having me everybody. We're going to have some fun.
Yes, definitely. And we also are joined by other human beings who are our guests. And the first human being that we have as a guest today is called Jessica Brooke. And Jessica is not only an actor, but she is an amazing brain and works in a lab as a lab assistant as well.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you going?
Good, how are you?
I am good.
Thank you for being here.
And we've also got Michelle Ezzy, who practically does everything, being a theatre educator, a dancer, an actor, a choreographer, and a director. I mean, that's a way to get everyone feeling like they can't do anything.
Yeah, putting us all to shame. Welcome, guys. We'd love to hear a little bit more about the both of you, obviously, so that our audiences know who we're going to be talking to today and what we're going to be talking about, which I'm saying talk a lot, but I will tell us all about that in a minute. But Jess, tell us a little bit about yourself and your creative journey and sort of who you are as a creative person.
So I decided watching Mamma You Returns when I was 5 that I wanted to be those women in that film and an actor since then. And then during my teens I kind of got disheartened and thought being a doctor is more realistic and practical. So I did a biomed degree, which was very hard to do, and deep down I just had this bubbling feeling coming up that acting is where I need to be. And so I followed my heart, and a year and a half ago I got onto my acting journey. And so I've been training and did some short films and a theatre show recently, and just trying to embrace as much as I can about this amazing craft and learning from wonderful people like yourselves. So
I love that so much. I feel like so many of us have that exact same experience. Like we try and go down the sensible route, or some of us don't.
A normal job.
A normal job, So I love that for you. And how nice to have both worlds anyway. There's nothing wrong with normal jobs either. I feel like actually I give them a hard time a lot on most of these podcasts. I'm like, day jobs, blah, but actually...
I know, a bleed plan is always good.
Yeah.
Something that you can rely on, and then you can really have that freedom to be creative and not really worry about that financial side so much.
And it's actually takes you out of your creative world, where you could just actually observe other people in everyday jobs, and which go back to your creative side. So it kind of works hand in hand really well.
Also, how would we even function if all we were actors and artists and painters and musicians and we had no doctors? We'll
have great movies.
Nothing else.
Yes, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Michelle.
So I started my journey as a musician. I studied classical trumpet at WAPA and did education at the same time, majoring in music with a minor in science, because I might actually get a job as a science teacher. So ended up doing music and science teaching, really hating science teaching, and then I applied for a music theatre position at John Curtin, and that's kind of where I realised what I needed to be doing with theatre education. I absolutely love doing that, and I started teaching and realised that I didn't have enough practical experience because I'd never been in a musical in my life. So I went and auditioned for Oklahoma.
Wow,
cool.
And got bitten by the bug, and now I can't stop.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that is such a typical creative journey, but it's brilliant because you're finding that love, and now you won't look back, will you? So.
No.
That's
wonderful.
Amazing. Well, today we are going to be talking about training the creative brain. So we've all got different experiences in that. So some of us are just people who are trying to train our creative brain, and some of us, like Michelle, are training other people's creative brains, which is amazing. Cool. But in particular, there's a few things that we're going to cover today. Things like the creative brain makeup, training in general, and finding balance in the training process. But I thought it would be great to start off with the creative brain makeup. And what I mean by that is I've always thought that perhaps creative brains are different and unique and maybe train in different ways. I know that everyone has their own sort of learning style, like visual, auditory, all those sorts of things, but I've always thought that the creative brain itself, or creative people, do have a different kind of brain and therefore need a different approach to their training. But I wondered what you guys think.
I actually think quite differently. I think everybody has a creative brain, but I don't think everyone's had the spark or the inspiration to use their creative brain. I think everyone has one simmering under there somewhere, but it takes the right kind of thing to unlock it, because we often think of creative brains as being musicians, actors, dancers, all those sort of things. But I think some of the most creative people in the world are scientists. How do you come up with all these brand new things if you don't have a creative brain?
So,
you have to think out of the box, actually, because like a science approach, they have a problem and then they have to try resolve that problem, but in order to resolve it they have to think of something new and go out of the box and try different things. So I agree with you. Creatively, everyone has something there.
But what do we think it makes some of us actually pursue that creative pathway in a more conventional sense, as opposed to going into more science as you did yourself and didn't end up enjoying it, and yet you really enjoy teaching what you're teaching now? So what do you think it was about your creative brain that really pushed you into that direction?
I think I liked the practical side, and it kind of fed into what I was good at. So I guess taking whatever your skill base is and extending it in a creative way. I was always drawn to dance and music, and that kind of just led me down that pathway. And I love science, but I found it so much harder to inspire others who had no interest in it, which is what kind of killed science teaching for me. Whereas I've found it easier to inspire kids who are in a program that they have to audition for, so they have to be keen on it already. And it's easier to inspire that way. So that's kind of what has fueled my passion for theatre education over science education.
Well, I remember when I was in year 10, I got like 30% in my drama and like 80 something in human bio. So I thought, well, clearly I don't have a creative brain, I have an intellectual brain. And so I'm going to, be a doctor. And then I realized like it was just like suppressing it, because here I am, I'm thinking, doing all my studies and actually just thinking of being this character. Imagine being in this world. So like what actually was sparking me joy is imagining different worlds and being different characters and creating different relationships and like superpowers and things. So I thought, well, that's actually where my brain naturally wants to be. It's interested in science, but doesn't mean that it's fitted just for a science career, And so I think like you could have interest in something, but what actually sparks your joy and something that you want to have your passion lie in, that's like depending on what kind of interest you have.
So perhaps what you were saying as well, Michelle, is true, that we've all got this creative brain, but unless we've got that spark, like what you're saying, Jess, it's just not activated and doesn't sort of come to life and come to fruition as such. They've actually said, I did a little bit of research when I went all analytical for a change, and it says that there was this Harvard study that have shown that people who are more creative can simultaneously engage brain networks that don't typically work together. So I think that's sort of what you were saying with when doctors have to come up with this new way to beat a disease or whatever the case is. They obviously are creative. But it's the labelling of it. We tend in society to, like you were saying, only see creative brains as musicians or artists or painters, but perhaps you're right, they are the scientists, or they are the people who are using their analytical brains in these ways to bring it together. With that being said, do you think then if people who are sort of starting to harness their brains and become more creative, do you think when we start to talk about training, do you think that if you have started to use your brain in that way, that it needs to be trained in a different way?
I don't necessarily think it needs to be trained differently. I think that because I'm at an arts school, we're never out to be a fame school. We're not saying we're going to have all the next actors, actresses, dancers and things. We really focus on the arts enhancing their learning through all their other subjects. So I think we're sparking creative minds through all our arts subjects, but it's fueling them in all their other areas. And because of the type of school, those educators as well are all about creativity and helping them learn. And you're probably right, actually. They do end up learning differently because we're focused on inspiring and getting their creative brains to work alongside analytical subjects.
Okay, that's interesting.
So we do think, though, as you were saying, that you were training them in a degree. And what would you think an actor or a dancer or anything that is actually trained in a skill set or inspired, as you were saying, as opposed to an actor or a dancer who may have come from a slightly more unsupportive environment and not had any of that training? Do we think that potentially that will affect the creative mindset?
Yeah, I think having a wide variety of training helps you to like apply yourself differently. And like, you know, our coach always is like voice, movement, do clowning, do something different. So you could have a toolbox that is wide, not just like specifically, I just do dance and that's the only thing I'm going to do. I'm just do acting. And it actually will help you in your craft and in whatever career that you want to do, to have training in everything or as much as you can. And it helps you learn better, because you're having to use different sides of the brains and learn different skill sets. So I think training is hugely important.
And I think every person connects differently with different teachers. So I'm not always going to be the best person for my students. Someone else is going to have a different approach that is better for someone else. So I think we all have such a wide spectrum of what is best for us.
Yeah, definitely, no matter whether or not your brain's analytical or creative. Yeah, I think we've all got
something, because people are like so quick to go creative, musicians and everything, and so therefore you can't be creative in law or science or politics or even like cooking or sport or something. But like the definition of creative is to create. That's to bring something new or bring things together. So that could be applied in everything. It's just people are going to use it for different tasks. You know, sportsmen are going to think of a creative way to learn a new skill, so they could say kick better in footy. And then a law person will think of a creative way to approach a different case. So everyone is innately creative in different fields.
And like we said, that study where it's talking about simultaneously engaging brain networks that don't typically work together, that is, I guess that's what we're discussing. That is, everyone has the ability to hone that process, and maybe then varied training is good because you're only benefiting that ability for your brain pathways to cross and using, you know, left and right brain and combining those two. And then hopefully firing off new ones to make you more creative.
Though sometimes it doesn't work like that, does it? Because sometimes you'll do a lot of training and then as a creative person you're not seeming to get ahead and it feels like you're just hitting against a wall. So what do you guys find really motivates you to stay trained, or what motivates you to keep training students that don't seem motivated?
I guess on my personal journey, it's been when I haven't had success, that's when I've been inspired to go and do something about it and go get more training. So when I'm struggling to get roles in musicals, I've gone and got vocal training and that sort of thing. But with the kids, it's often hard. Sometimes it's showing them something someone else has done that'll spark their interest, which then has that like domino effect of them going, okay, I need to work at this, or put more effort into this. But it's, I think it's about finding something that interests them and gives them that motivation to pursue it.
Because it's hard. Like I personally struggle, and I think a lot of people could relate, is, you know, when you're not seeing progress, or maybe you had a bad week in an acting class, then you take it like personally. You're like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But it's just, you just had a bad week or something. You're just taking longer to learn something. And then I just go, well, had a bad week. Let's just push through and try it like next week. And then next week, you know, you lose all your self-expectations, as in you just kind of get out of your own head. And you actually have a great acting class. And I find my motivation lies in knowing that it's not going to happen exactly like in a week. You're not going to become go to a TV series or be in a big theatre show or in a big movie and stuff, because it takes a lot of time, the marathon versus sprint viewpoint. And I go, when I see my progress, like I try to apply myself. You do a short film or you do a theatre show and you go, oh, this is what they say in class. So then you go, well, next time I do a class, if I've had a bad week, I'm going to remember that. One day I'm going to apply what I've just learnt, even if I'm not getting it now. So people should just keep pushing through and know that one day everything will make sense.
I think that's an interesting point. In so many, if we talk versus like intellectual versus creative training, I know we don't like to label it too much, but I think so often, say you're learning a new job for the first time, for example, and it's very straightforward. It's literally a case of, if we're in a lab, okay, the test tubes need to go here, they need to have these specific chemicals added to them. You're being trained, but it's a different type of process. Whereas if you're a creative person, like for example an actor, you have all this training and you're motivated and it's great, but I think the difference is that it's to show your training, you have to access this like vulnerable part of yourself and put it on display. And it's not the same thing. Like it's you're always a human being and a work in progress. Yeah. So I think sometimes that's where the demotivation, I don't know if that's a word, but that's where it comes from. Because, you can't just be like, yes, it's not, in some worlds it's not emotional, it's not you on display showing your training, but as an actor, for example, I think that's a really great approach that you're doing it in stages and not like a marathon, because otherwise I think it does become like demoralizing because you look at yourself as a package and don't think to think that it is a work in progress and it's slow and that's okay. I think maybe the expectations are different in a creative industry with training.
Because like if you do a test, a maths test or whatever test, you have a result. Like you got however much out of however much, and that's like, you see your success based on that. But with acting, it's so subjective, and it's like, well, did my audience feel what I was feeling, or am I feeling this? And like I remember my theatre show, one night I just could not like drop in, and afterwards I was like, that was shocking, like should I do this? And one of the actors were actually like, well, that's part of your training, to really go back and learn how to tackle those little problems that are stumbling you up in a live theatre show, so next time you do it you don't feel that you've done such a bad job, so it's a lot of trial and error, and also know that people have not, you might feel it and go, yeah, that was a success, and someone might not just like or relate to that character. That doesn't mean that you failed as like an actor, or if a musician, your music is not being heard by people that enjoy that kind of music or those lyrics. That doesn't mean that you failed. It's just everyone has their own subjective view.
That's how you said when you were at school you got 30% in drama, but look at you now. I mean, you're actually acting. Yeah. And it was because obviously your theatre teachers had a completely different idea of what was good acting to, let's say, the people that are casting you. So I think everyone's going to have that different opinion, so it's important to realise that for every hater and unsupportive person, there's always going to be someone that's all for you and really loving what you do.
Yeah.
I think students put a lot of pressure on themselves as well. They think that one audition is everything. Yeah. And if they don't get a starring role, it's the end of the world. They may not suit that show. They weren't right for that part. Their vocal range didn't suit that character. And some of them just find that such a wall and can't get past that, not having a large role in something. And it takes some of them a fair while where they will go all the way through lower school, not getting like big roles, and they're basing their ability on that, but it's not that at all. And then I had a student say to me yesterday, Miss, I've never had a big role and suddenly I'm Wednesday Addams, like, because this was there for you. You've worked, you've kept working, and this character suits you. You were ready for this. All those other times that you weren't achieving what you thought you should have been achieving, it was just that progress. But kids don't tend to see it as the journey. They see it as a here now sort of thing, which is really hard to teach.
And I don't think drama in high school was very reflective of what acting and the industries like in the real world.
We try to make it as much as we can. But
Yeah, you can,
never
but
the
it's
same.
like, because I suppose kids think this is like the dial. Like, if I do not make this theatre show, I'm not going to be an actor. And it's like, well, you just weren't suited to whatever characters were in that theatre show,
I think even adults feel that way.
Yeah.
I
Oh, yes.
definitely had moments where I felt that way.
Yeah.
You train and you train and you train and you train, and like you say, even though you've been told that part just wasn't probably right for you,
There's
that's
a
okay.
Voice in the back of your head
Yeah,
going,
you're like,
but
it's
what
me.
if it's me?
It's me. The training wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I need to do more. I need to do more.
Yeah.
And talking about that, I think actors definitely fall into two brackets. Those who think that they don't need any more training and are fabulous and that the roles should just be landing in their laps. And then there's the people who are just at every workshop. They're just like training junkies, I think.
And those people can get so addicted to the training that will even bring more satisfaction than the actual gigs. When
Yeah.
they come.
Yeah, it's like you never leave the training room. You
Yeah.
just, and I think it becomes like a safe space, and you're an actor because you're training,
Yeah.
but you're not, because you're not going out there and doing anything. So
Getting those knockbacks.
Yeah.
exactly.
That's a good
So
point.
if we're thinking about that, what do you think is a healthy balance and practice when it comes to attending training?
I think you just always got to have that end point. So you do your training, but it's got to build to something, because what's the point of training if you can't test yourself? You're constantly in the classroom, and where is that end? Where can you really prove what you've learnt or not learnt, reflect and go back to the classroom? It's you need that end.
And I I love training, so I would try to go to as many classes as I can, but one, it's expensive.
Yes.
So you need to be out of that space to train. But I honestly learn the most when I'm applying what I've training, because you could go to do a class each week and you have a script and you're training against other actors who are training, and you only focus on the script, but you're also not experiencing what set life is, what theatre life is, and that's when you're actually going to go out of your comfort zone and be forced to either learn on the spot or apply what you have learned. And that's actually a space where you realise that all the things you have to now learn, so you could be more specific in what courses you do. And I think if you're going to be comfortable just training, then that's you want to do that, but it's not going to actually move you forward, because you need that application of the training. You could only do that so much in an acting class.
And they say that every actor is basically two actors: the actor that they are at home in their shower, and then the actor they are in the audition room.
Yeah.
Do you think that perhaps there's three actors? There's the actor at home, the actor in the audition room, and then that actor in training? And if so, what is that actor?
See, I get really, quite shy when I'm in some acting classes, and I get quite nervous being in front of the people, but then I'm at home, I'm singing in the shower woo! And then on set, when I'm comfortable with people, with the theatre career I had, I just come out of myself, and that's actually where I'm enabling myself to act better, because I'm losing any barriers that I've put up, which is something I'm constantly trying to work against in my acting classes. So I think I'm my own worst enemy in my acting classes, and it's really a kick. I just want to kick that away. And then when you're in an audition room, it's very intimate, and you have that if I don't get this, or if I stuff up, you put so much pressure on yourself. And I think it's easier to say, just be the actor at home in everything that you do, but it's not as easy. No. So I like that three different actors.
What about using that pressure? Because you're never going to be that really relaxed person that you are at home. So perhaps, Michelle, is there a way as a teacher that you can, teach people to use that pressure for an advantage, as opposed to, freezing up?
Yeah, I guess it's the adrenaline of the audition room that kind of needs to be honed. It's that you're on edge, but using that complete high to deliver your best performance, because you're so much more in tune with your feelings. I think when you're in the audition room, the feeling is usually complete terror, but you can access everything else through that fear, I think. But what I always say to my kids is the more prepared you are, the more you can there's those extra bits you get rid of the, I need to remember my lines, my lyrics, those sort of things. If they're comfortable, you only have to worry about the stress and keeping that tame and using it in the audition room.
I think preparation is key. Like, people try, and I definitely have tried to, wing an audition, you know, not as prepared as you can be. And then sometimes you think you can never be as prepared. But it's really, when you are prepared for an audition, you could go there and you do have less stress because you go, I've done everything I could. And if it's, you know, I don't get the role, then I've done myself a justice by being prepared. So, and I like the whole being in tune with your feelings when you're under that pressure. Like, I went for a role for nervous, like, she was quite a nervous character, and thankfully I was so nervous in the audition. I was like, this worked great.
I can use this.
Yeah. But going on what you said with people who don't find that they don't need any training, then I don't think they should be in this industry at all, because
I know.
like, who are you know? And they're the ones that might actually buckle in an audition because they don't have any training to prepare them for those auditions, and they have a huge ego. So
No one will want to work with them. I think that's the biggest issue.
I think so too. I think talking about before, I wanted to touch on, you know, being prepared in an audition when you are stressed. I think a lot of that happens because of what you've prepared in your training, that your subconscious can then take over. So that when you're in a state of stress, there's this underlying autopilot of, I know how to do this because I've trained. I've been in the training workshops. I've felt nervous before, so that when you're faced with an audition situation, at least, yes, you may be feeling nervous, but there are things that will just automatically switch on out of routine and out of habit. And, you know, they say that there's these 4 stages of the creative process. So you've got your preparation, which is conscious. So you're training, you're in the training room, amazing. You've got your incubation period, which is subconscious, and I think that's when all your training is being applied, everything's happening behind the scenes. It's, you know, there's this, your brain's just sort of ticking away on what you've learned without you having to think about it. Then they've got this stage where it says there's this illumination moment, and that's the aha moment, and maybe that's what you're talking about, where you go out and you're actually in a play, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that really worked, and I know why. I finally know why. And then you've got this other moment that's after that, which is like a verification moment, which is where they say you challenge that aha moment. And on one hand, you've got this like, aha, it worked, but then I think you can then take your training to the next stage and not only challenge why it worked, but how can you be better after that? I think. So I think that training, obviously you don't want to be like the junkies we were talking about, just going all the time, but I don't think your training ever ends in any subject really, or anything, even if you're a scientist. There's always something new to learn. And also, I think you train within your limits that you know, but I think we don't always know our limits. And I think that's an interesting thing to come out of training, that actually who you thought you were, you could be capable of so much more than you ever knew.
And I find like the more I learn, the more I feel I don't know enough, which is like motivating in itself to learn more, because, you know, you learn something and then suddenly you learn something new about something else, and it's like a branch to learn something new down that way. Especially like the behind the cameras, I find like lighting, sound, that's something I just want to learn, because that's going to help you as an actor. And I like your 4 stages, because you have that aha moment and then you go, well, that worked, well, how can I do it again, and how can I do it better, you know? So challenge yourself there. I like that a lot.
And then your limits are always changing without realising it. You know, you got to the stage that you always wanted to get to, but all of a sudden that's not good enough anymore, because now you know how to do that. You want to go further.
Tick that off next.
And that's, I think, what helps keep you inspired, because if you don't ever have end goals and you're just sort of flapping around in the same position, you're going to stay in that same position for a very long time until it stops being inspiring.
Goals are important. I've tried to like sit down and write goals, and I haven't gotten it to like yet, but I will soon. But actually what made me realise that I have actually achieved goals, because I did it last year and I stumbled upon the piece of paper that I wrote, and I was like, I have achieved this, I have achieved that. But it's like subconscious. Like when you write goals, it becomes subconscious and actually drives you through like all the actions you do that year, that you forget that you've written those goals until you look back at it and you're like, I achieved that. And you know, that's a really like self-validating feeling. It's really nice.
And maybe a good way to measure, because we were saying, you know, it can be quite difficult in a creative industry to measure yourself in the same sort of way as a, you know, intellectual environment. So perhaps that's a great way if you've written these goals and they are just ticking away under the subconscious. Every now and then you pull them out and you're like, that's, you know, I think that's a really great way to reflect, because I think if you don't, it is just this never-ending world of training and you can't see. I don't know, sometimes I think I've had the moments where I'm like, why am I bothering? Like, I just, you know, because you don't measure it in the right way, and therefore you can't see the other people around you probably can see you growing and changing and becoming a better performer, but you within yourself, if you've not got that measuring tool, you know, how do you...
And going back to the balance of like training and then actually applying what you learnt in a show or whatever, you should have training goals and you should have like career orientated goals. You know, try do a workshop that you haven't gone in, that could be your goal, or try audition for 5 things this year, or try be in a short film. And so you should have that balance, because that will make you actually a rounded person, and that'll be good.
Okay, we're getting to the end of our talk. I can't believe it. We do have to start to wrap up. We always normally have a follow-up question, but obviously we are still quite new as post-dramatic stress, but I have my own follow-up question until we get some from the audience. And I wondered, for the two of you, and talking about training the creative brain, is there any experiences that you guys can share where you've just had amazing training, just sort of a real click for you, or a real switch, a real aha moment? And if so, can you share?
I guess one of them for me was the NIDA workshop, which we at Charlotte actually did together. Because I hadn't done any acting training at all. I kind of just had done a couple of shows, just kind of testing the waters at that point, and finding that space where I could be creative with other people, and finding, okay, I've got a lot to learn, but I can do this. That was kind of my moment of going, okay, I want to keep doing this, keep training, keep being better. But I think that was really important for me to kickstart my joy of acting.
What was the workshop?
They do a 5-day workshop with NIDA. They fly someone over, and 5 days of workshops doing improv and scene work. And
it's really great, highly recommended. It's at the Subiaco Art Centre. And they do a bunch that they just come over, and you can do these intensive 2-day or 5-day workshops, but often people don't know about them, so people listen, they're there. Please enroll, because they often cancel classes because not enough people enroll, and it's just madness. It's such a great workshop. So, and
they won't do part 2 till there's enough people to do it, because I'm craving to do it, but they won't run it here yet.
Is that their beginner one? Because I've seen those. I really want to do those.
But they cater so much to who they've got, because everyone in our class had a really good grounding already, and so they made it harder for us, it was great. There was no point we went, this is kind of boring because it's easy, because it was a beginner class, but it didn't feel like a beginner class.
How about you? Same question.
I really connected with my NASA courses that I did, Nicholson's Academy, and because we had a wonderful coach, Fern, and she really helped us seek the truth in our performance and in our character, and don't just settle for first layer understanding, dig deep and always ask why, and that need to be truthful is something that just really resonated with me. And so those are my aha moments. But even I think because she really pushes you to be not only the best person you can be and the best actor, but be the best learner. And so sometimes, when I'm that wasn't truthful, I'm bad at this, I'm going to quit. But, not I'm going to quit, but I'm sad. And, but then realize, it's hard because, everyone talks about follow your instincts, acting, it's not that hard, just follow your instincts. I'm that's really hard, because I've had instincts talk to me, and, you question them and then you do something else. And so it's not always simple and breezy as follow your instincts. But with the training I did at NASA, I've really found all the other projects that I've done, that's something that's really helped me connect to my characters that I've got and be proud of the work that I created. And I also did a NIDA residency, so that's something you guys should get on board because that's great.
Yeah,
that's a
finding
lot of
time.
fun. Oh, yeah, 3 weeks.
That's a whole nother podcast. Finding time
Yeah.
to train. Next
is.
week. Well, look, guys, I am going to wrap us up. I don't want to, but I am because we're reaching that 35-minute mark. But thank you so much.
Before we lose you, what are your socials? Because
you.
our lovely listeners want to follow you.
Yes, thank you so much.
I run a Facebook page called Music and Theatre Education, which you should get onto. And I'm about to be in Sense and Sensibility in May, which is at Melville Theatre. Book your tickets.
Watch that. I have a friend who's in that.
Oh, great.
Actually, yeah. I'm Jessica T. Brooke on Instagram, and that's about it.
More than enough. That's amazing and lovely. All of our socials will follow in the trailer next. So if you'd like to follow us or come on the show, please let us know. We'd love to have you. We'd love to talk to you and really build this connection not only in Perth but in Australia with all creative artists. So please engage with us. We love you. We want to have you. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Post-Traumatic Stress. To connect with us or to register to come on the podcast, visit us at www.lettingcharlotteout.com or email us via postdramaticstresspod@gmail.com.